The lemon oil on my butcher block caught the morning light and turned it to honey. My phone lay face down on the counter, screen pulsing through the wood like a faint heartbeat. It was 9:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, the house still tasting like last. Night's roasted garlic and rosemary. I had just washed my coffee mug, the thick ceramic one with a hairline crack I couldn't bring myself to throw away, when I flipped the phone. The text sat there like a needle laid on velvet. "You're not invited to the wedding." It was from my sister Tessa, and she had added one pale emoji of confetti as if to soften it. I watched the dots for a minute, then more words appeared. "It's just simpler. Please respect this boundary." I could smell the coffee cooling, the citrus of the soap, the faint metallic note from the sink. I felt the old floorboards equalize beneath me, and I typed one word back: understood. The tiny "delivered" stamped itself below my reply. A car door thudded outside. The house breathed. Understood. I am the oldest by 4 years. When our father had his second heart event in March of 2021, I drove to his shop, a squat brick box with a buckled sign, Marlowe Millworks, and found bills in a shoebox and payroll on a yellow legal pad. I was the one who sold the unused lathe, negotiated the lease back, and quietly bought the building's mortgage from the bank for pennies on the dollar when they called the note. I set up a holding company, H&P Holdings, named for the 2 streets. Harbor and Pine hauled bankers' boxes into my small office and paid the back taxes with a cashier's check that blinked too many zeros. I did it out of muscle, not martyrdom. Tessa liked to say I lived at spreadsheet altitude. I like to say, not out loud, that the ground rises to meet you where you stand. My sister is quicksilver when the room loves her, and glass when it doesn't. A memory I hadn't asked for returned like it had been waiting by the door. We were 10 and 6, building a wedding from laundry on the clothesline. Tessa was the bride in a sheet. I was the organist and the congregation and the person who ran to get Mom when a neighbor's dog charged the yard. After, Tessa said, "You always have to be the one who knows what to do." I was quiet because I didn't know how to be any other thing. The first thing they took was access. The wedding invitations went out with watercolor peonies, and an absence where my name should have lived. The group chat that hummed for months, Mom, Aunt Renee, Tessa, sometimes me, went silent for me only. I learned later it had simply been renamed. I was left on a staging of email threads with subject lines like ribbon colors and honey jars for favors, but never the core plan. It was like walking into a room where the chairs are new, but no one admits the old ones are missing. When I clicked on the documents link Tessa sent in March, the seating chart mockups, the Google Drive returned. You need permission. A new file appeared the next day called Guest Logistics Final. I was not in it. Evidence, even when petty, has weight. I kept 3 artifacts: a folded florist slip quoting $6,180 for ranunculus and smokebush with owner comp, scrawled in the corner. A PDF of a credit application to Marlowe Event Supply with my name, Selena Marlowe, typed into Officer Guarantor, a signature that wasn't mine, and a request for a $12,900 line to cover rentals, and a scanned check image that an accounts clerk accidentally CC'd me on, a $28,400 deposit to Harbor and Pine, the venue's parent memo line, T plus CP May 18th deposit. The date, May 18th, was written like a promise. The lever wasn't just a paper. It was a structure. H&P Holdings, my quiet, decent little company, had acquired the distressed notes of 3 properties in 2021 during those hard months when everyone was running a hand along the edge of what could fail. One of those properties was Harbor and Pine, the restored cannery that had become the most sought-after wedding venue in our county, with vaulted rafters, a polished concrete floor, and light that made cameras go quiet. The previous owner, a charismatic man who had more charm than cash flow, signed a statement of default in October. We structured a forbearance. The deed of trust shifted. I took no joy in any of that. I took steadiness. It also meant that every time a deposit hit their account, an accounting note mirrored it on the back end for my eyes. When Tessa's fiancé, Colin Price, paid the $28,400 deposit, the mirror light blinked on my dashboard. No one saw me because I am, by preference, a wall. The shift accelerated in small, obvious ways. Tessa postponed a coffee with me twice. Once, with a harried, "so sorry, vendor crisis," and once with a silence. Mom handed me a list to print at my office and asked me not to look, which is how I saw head count 128, and "will handle Selena." It was not malice. It was the small ruthlessness people allow themselves when they believe a story about you. The third artifact, the Marlowe Event Supply Credit application, arrived as a "just confirming here." The header bore their blue logo, the footer the address of their depot off Route 19. My name sat where guarantors sit. The signature, curved, loopy, an extra flourish on the M, belonged to someone else. It was typed over in a faint pixelation a person who loved form over function would think looked official. I did the calm things. I printed the application. I laid it on my desk next to a sample of my own signature from a notary file. I looked at the descenders and the rhythm. My real hand doesn't close its loops, this one performed them like applause. I breathed and counted what I knew. Not what I feared. I made a fresh list: $28,400 deposit, $12,900 attempted credit, 128 headcount, May 18th date, 72-hour clause. That last detail was actually a gift. Every Harbor and Pine contract has a clause that any material misrepresentation or unauthorized discount voids the preferred rates and triggers a 72-hour cure notice. I know this because I wrote it once, sitting cross-legged on my office rug while the cleaning crew vacuumed beyond my door. The ally arrived like a person who's been there the whole time and waited for rain. Reena Patel, Harbor and Pines Jr. Events manager, had been hired 8 months earlier to wrangle timelines and keep anxious brides from dissolving into glitter. I'd met her once at a board meeting, a quick handshake, crisp eyes, a notebook full of square handwriting. She called me that afternoon from a back hallway where I could hear the low hum of a refrigeration unit. "Selena," she said, her voice neutral, "do you have a minute to look at something?" She forwarded me a change order that Colin had submitted, a request to swap out pendant lighting for Edison bulbs, for ambiance, and a line that simply read, "Owner comp, 100% on rentals." It attached the forged credit application. "Paper is where truth sits quietly," Reena said when I didn't respond right away. "It lets everyone say what they want. It just waits." Something in me took all its breath and stored it. I didn't call Tessa or Mom or Colin. I moved paper where it goes. I asked Reena to hold the change order unsigned for 1 hour. I logged into the owner portal and set the rentals vendor to manual approval. I drafted a short letter to Harbor and Pines general manager, something that said, "Pursuant to Section 12C of the venue agreement, a potential unauthorized representation has been made regarding owner comp. Please pause discretionary concessions pending verification. No legal advice, no flourish. A fact at a time, set in a line like stone." I sent 3 emails to 3 places: the rentals company, attaching my driver's license and a notary-stamped signature card; the general manager, asking for a calm verification; and my bank contact flagging the deposit to ensure any refund, if it came to that, could be returned to its source without dispute. It took 32 minutes to press send on all 3. Then I went to the sink, washed the lemon oil from my fingers again, and felt the house level. You don't owe anyone your seat to pay for their table. Reena said that the next morning when we walked the Harbor and Pine floor together. The room was an exhale of light. Long windows, rafters like ribs, the ghost of old brine in the boards that no amount of polyurethane could fully erase. The general manager, a man named Jeff with a gift for pressing tension into jokes, saw me from across the room and smiled like he'd swallowed a laugh. Well, he said, stepping closer, hand extended but not seeking mine. "Hi, owner." We were alone when he said it like that. It wasn't a flex, it was a note placed exactly where it belonged. I nodded. "Hi," I said, and we both looked at Reena's paper. "There's a move you learn if you've ever had to untangle something knotted in family. Do not make the knot the person's throat. Make it the rope and set it on the table." I didn't stride around giving orders. I asked to see the executed contract and the signature line where Tessa's name, her real hand, I knew that wash of loops, sat under the words bride, primary. I asked to see the discount approvals. There were none. I asked to see the deposit ledger. The $2,400 shined in the mid-column, cleared on the second. "I'll need to send a 72-hour notice to cure," Jeff said, cutting his eyes to me as if to check whether I'd object. Material misrep plus forgery on a vendor application. We can offer them full compliance or full cancel. No middle. Send it, I said. And please keep all correspondence on email. No calls. He nodded. Rena's pen wrote with the soft scratch of a cricket. By noon, the emails landed. The one to Tessa and Colin was professional, almost warm. Hi, Tessa and Colin, a quick compliance item to resolve. It appears an unauthorized owner comp was invoked with a third-party vendor and an application was submitted using Ms. Selena Marlowe's name. We'll need to cure this within 72 hours. 2 options. 1. Confirm that all vendor charges will be at contracted rates and retract the application. Or 2. Elect to cancel for cause and receive a deposit refund, less any incurred costs, which currently total $0. Please reply by Friday at 12 p.m. Rena CC'd me discreetly in BCC as agreed. The fallout didn't wait for Friday. It burst. My phone ticked up like a flight board. Tessa called at 107, 109, 113, 118. My mother's name appeared, then Colin's, then Aunt Renee, who only calls to say, I'm staying out of it, then continues to not stay out. By dusk, there were 41 missed calls and 12 voicemails, each one a different temperature. Tessa's early one, high and brittle. Sal, this is a misunderstanding. Call me right now. Mom's low and reasonable. We need to talk about what you're doing to your sister's big day. Colin's crafted performance. We both know what this is about. Let's be adults. I didn't answer any of them. I made dinner, seared salmon, blistered cherry tomatoes, rice with a bay leaf floating in it, and ate it standing up while the voicemails stacked like cordwood. 41 missed calls. It was not a number I savored. It was a number that simply sat there and made you pick it up or step around it. I picked up nothing. I typed instead. I emailed Tessa at 7:04 p.m. I received the 72-hour notice from Harbor and Pine and agree it's appropriate. I'll be happy to talk after you. Reply to them and we have clarity on the facts. And because people confuse silence with contempt, I added one more line. What I want is for you to have the wedding you planned, paid for, and deserve. What I didn't write is that what I want even more is to stop being a walking utility, line everyone thinks they can plug into. The knock came the next morning, not like thunder, but like a rhythm. 2 short, 1 long. When I opened the door, a woman in a slate blazer stood on my stoop, hair pulled back, badge on her belt, but invisible enough not to feel like a threat. Detective N. Calder, it read when she moved and the leather flashed. Ms. Marlowe, she said. I wanted to get ahead of this in person. We received a fraud complaint from Marlowe Event Supply. Someone filed a credit application in your name yesterday. I figured I'd stop by before I sent a formal email. Institutional beats exist like weather. They don't save you, they pressure the day. I invited her in, offered coffee, and she declined with a small smile. She was not there to be friends. She was there to make a shape. I gave her a copy of the forged application and my signature card. I'm not interested in pressing charges today, I said, which is not legal advice and is only what I felt in that minute. But I do need it on record in case this slips again, she nodded. We don't decide the timing, she said. We decide the file. She tapped her notebook. Paper is where truth sits quietly, she echoed, and I wondered if she and Rena had ever met in some private school of women who keep rooms running. I did not see Tessa until Friday. The 72 hours felt like holding my breath just under the surface where you can see the sky waver. She texted me at 7:32 a.m., the message stripped of fluff. Can we meet at Harbor and Pine at 10? I wrote back. Yes. I took a sweater even though the forecast was warm. I always take a sweater. It's not about temperature, it's about not needing what someone else hands you. The office at Harbor and Pine looked like a cozy dental practice, with soft gray chairs and a plant that had been braver than expected. Rena's desk was precise. Jeff's had a mug that insisted it had been washed but still told on him with a ring. Tessa walked in with Mom at her side and Colin trailing half a step behind like a thought. Tessa had done her hair in the loose. Bends she liked, eyes bright and already wet. Mom's mouth was a line she'd practiced for decades. Colin wore a thin tie his hands kept finding. We should talk alone, Mom said to Jeff and Rena, the old instinct to clear a room rising up like muscle memory. Jeff smiled with his eyes only. "We'll stay," he said. "This is about the contract." I looked at my sister. "Hi, Tess," I said. She didn't say my name back. She put both palms on the chair in front of her like an athlete at a starting line. "You are trying to ruin my wedding," she said, her voice trembling but her words clean. "You've always had to be in control, but this is a new level." "I sent 3 emails and answered none of your calls," I said, which was, true and also evasive. "The venue found a problem. We're here to fix it." Colin stepped forward, shoulders squared. "This whole owner thing," he said, and did the little air quotes with his fingers that someone should have told him looked like a puppet complaining. "You could have said something. We wouldn't have. We were told we had a comp. On rentals, that it was a family rate. It's not a big deal." "It's a document with my name," I said. "It's not an idea." "Let's walk through the points," Rena said, "and thank whatever quiet gods there are for a woman whose timing is impeccable. We have 1. A third-party vendor application submitted using Ms. Marlowe's name and signature. 2. An email invoking owner comp that isn't authorized. 3. The 72-hour cure clause. We're on hour 68. I watched Mom's eyes flick to me. For a flash, she looked like she had when Dad came home late and chose exhaustion over apology. All my life, she has been better at enduring than adjusting. She reached for Tessa's hand and found it. "Can't we just go forward?" she said. "Tessa has 128 guests. We can pay full price." "That would resolve it," Jeff said. "We'll rescind the preferred rate and keep the date." He glanced at me like a respectful concierge. We both knew Harbor and Pine didn't need my permission for that, but optics are a currency you spend slowly. "I don't want your money," Tessa said to me, which stung for all the obvious and subtle reasons, one being that she had wanted my name earlier in the transaction. "We're going to do this without you. We were always going to do it without you." The mask slipped on the last sentence, the emphasis less on independence than erasure. "We were always going to do it without you." Colin's mouth twitched, like his words had taken him somewhere he hadn't planned. He found a chair and put it between us, and his fingers went to the knot of his tie, worrying it. "Okay," he said, then exhaled too hard. "I filled out the rental thing. I did it. It was a template. I didn't think it mattered." "Colin," Mom said softly, which was all the closeness he was going to get from her in public. "It matters," I said. "Because my name is a key that opens and closes things, and you tried to use it while you were standing there telling me I'm not invited." My voice didn't rise. This is important for the record. I am not a shouter. I am the person who writes the minutes and then makes sure they're accurate. I don't raise my voice. I raise the receipts. Rena slid a folder across the table. Inside a single page, simple, almost elegant, titled Acknowledgement and Restitution. It said that Colin Price acknowledged he had submitted an application in my name, that no credit was extended, that he would remit a $12,900 cashier's check to Marlowe Event Supply by end of day to cover the rentals at full price, and that he would never again use my name in any vendor document. It had a second paragraph. Upon receipt, Harbor and Pine would remove the for cause notation and maintain the current event date at full standard rates. There was no theater. There was a place to sign. "And the deposit?" Tessa asked, her eyes on me, the question a blade you could also eat with. "You can choose," Jeff said gently. "You can ask for a refund, less fees, currently 0, and release the date, or you can proceed. It's Friday. Your wedding is next Saturday. We wanted you to have control." The word did a small thing in the air. We were a room of people who had been born with or married into the feeling that control is the only thing between you and chaos. But control also looks like a hand that can set something down. I looked at Tessa and saw the 6-year-old with a sheet veil, the 10-year-old with grass stains, the 20-year-old who moved through rooms like a house cat and found every warm square of sun. I also saw a woman who had sent me a clean, cruel sentence at 9:17 a.m. and watched to see if she could live with it. "I won't attend a wedding I'm not invited to," I said. "But I won't ruin it. If you want to keep the date, keep it. Pay in full, sign, and it's done. I shifted my eyes to Colin. You did something shabby. This is how you repair it. He looked at the page, then at Tessa, then at me. He signed his name with a hand that discovered a tremor. Tessa made a sound like she'd swallowed a sigh. She turned to me with something I couldn't immediately identify on her face. Not quite gratitude, not quite defiance. We'll keep the date, she said. We'll do it without you. You already did, I said, and the relief laced. With that sentence tasted like iron and rain. I accept your boundary. Here's mine. Don't use my name again. We left the office in streams. Mom tossed me a glance that was almost an apology. You could have been kinder, she said. At the door, and the sentence lived in the space where mothers keep their old disappointments. I was exact, I said, and that sounded colder than it was. It was the truest thing I had. At 3:18 p.m., my phone buzzed. A photo from Rena of a receipt. $12,900 from Colin Price to Marlowe Event Supply, paid with a cashier's check. All resolved, she captioned, followed by, you don't owe anyone your seat to pay for their table. I sat in my car in the Harbor and Pine lot and closed my eyes. I hadn't cried once all week. I didn't then. Tears are not the only proof of feeling. Sometimes the proof is the tremor you don't let move you. The week turned to its edge. The 41 missed calls stopped being a press and became a fact. Tessa's wedding took place under the vaulted rafters. The photos later proved it had been beautiful in exactly the way she had wanted. A dress with petaled shoulders, ranunculus and smoke bush that looked like little storms, Edison bulbs that someone paid full price for, a cake with sugared figs. I was not there. I took a walk that afternoon in a different part of town where the storefronts on Pine had been repainted a clean navy, and the barista at the second cafe called everyone darling. I bought a small notebook with a marbled cover and wrote down 3 sentences in my own hand. My name is not your key. My silence is not your consent. My love is not your leverage. On Monday, an envelope arrived at my office, cream stock, my name written in Tessa's wash of loops. Inside, a photograph. Her and Colin under the Edison lights, grinning, a slice of cake midair on a fork. On the back, she wrote, I know you think you did the right thing. I'm still mad. But I also know what Colin did was wrong. We'll figure it out later. T. I didn't know if we meant she and I or she and him. Sometimes ambiguity is a kind of grace. Sometimes it's a fog. I set the photo in my top drawer. I didn't tape it anywhere. The Harbor and Pine board met that week, a tidy hour in a room that smelled like binder clips and eucalyptus. We voted to add a line to the event contract, clarifying that preferred rates cannot be extended through familial implication. We reviewed the quarter's numbers. Jeff's mug had a new ring. Rena's notebook had 2 new tabs, both green. When we adjourned, she stood in my doorway with a half smile. You had a steadiness, she said. It was instructive. It's easier when the paper is good, I said, and it was not false modesty. It's just easier when the line holds. After I drove past my father's old shop, the Marlowe Millworks sign still buckled, but somehow more itself for it. I have the key to that building now, a brass rectangle with H&P 12B stamped on it. When the light catches it, it turns everything it touches the color of something older and more honest than gold. I pulled over and walked around back, where the Q's chain-link fence hums with vines in summer and rattles in winter. The side door still sticks. I have to put my shoulder into it. The air inside is sawdust and old projects. I hung the key on the hook where he used to set his ring and his lighter, a place that had always looked more like an altar than a shelf. I left the key on the hook, not as surrender, not as anger, as a way of saying, I know what belongs to me and what does not. The lemon oil smell clung to my sweater from earlier in the week, a small domestic ghost. I thought about the crack in my coffee mug, how I had kept it not because I wanted to be stoic, but because some things are meant to show you where the force once was. I thought also about the one word I had sent back to Tessa, and how, in the end, it was the right one. Understood means I hear you. It also means I stand where I stand. At home, I took the marbled notebook from my bag and added 2 more lines. Forgiveness is not a coupon code. Family is not a contract, but mine has clauses. I felt the room level under my feet, the old floorboards, doing their quiet work. When I looked up, the light was on the counter again, turning the grain to honey. My phone lay face down. It hummed once, an email, not a call. The house breathed. Hi, owner. No one said it. It was the thought itself, a thing that begins not with a title, but with a person's ability to keep a room steady. In that steadiness, there is room for other people's weather and for your own. There is room someday for Tessa and me in a kitchen where lemon oil and coffee live in the same air and no one needs a contract to be kind. There is room for the truth to sit quietly on paper and for the people who made mistakes to sign their names and mean it. Until then, I keep the receipts, I keep my seat, and I keep my word. Paper is where truth sits quietly,